This video is sponsored by the Prejudice Watch Company. Starting in August of 1942, American bombers began hitting German-occupied France, Belgium, Norway, and Holland. By 1943, Germany proper was being bombed. North Africa and Sicily were in Allied hands by 1944, and Italy proper was being conquered. But the key part of winning World War II was the invasion of France, hence the planning of the greatest sea and air invasion in history, Operation Overlord. What was Operation Overlord? How many Allied troops were committed? What were the risks? What started D-Day and Overlord? Hello, I'm Colin Heaton, former history professor, Army and Marine Corps veteran, and welcome to this episode of Forgotten History. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Commander of Allied Forces, and his planners reviewed all the lessons learned from previous amphibious and airborne invasions by Allied forces, including Operation Torch, the invasion of North Africa, Operation Husky, the invasion of Sicily, all far from being perfect parachute drops, and the landings at Anzio and other locations in Italy. All of these operations had been prefaced by airborne operations dropping Allied paratroopers as the first strike against German-occupied territory. Operation Overlord was to be the greatest test of Allied resolve and capabilities. In the months and weeks before D-Day, the Allies carried out a massive deception operation to convince the Germans that the main invasion force would be at the Pas de Calais rather than Normandy. That's the narrowest point between England and France. This was the first U.S. Army Group, FUSAG, and redesignated as the 12th Army Group under Patton, based out of Dover, East Anglia, and other areas of southeast England, with the intent to deceive the Germans. This was a paper army, but was provided actual soldiers to pose with the fake equipment to give the illusion of a powerful force to be led by Patton. I'm proud to own the new C-47 D-Day watch made out of D-Day history. The C-47 watch by Prejudice is constructed from two hamburger doors that came from two D-Day veteran C-47 Skytrains. These planes were used to ferry airborne units such as the 101st and 82nd Airborne Divisions from England to Normandy in the early morning of June 6, 1944. Prejudice managed to cut the C-47's aluminum doors into dials, keeping the original wear and tear accumulated by these planes during their combat service in World War II. Because of the historical legacy the C-47 medal gives this watch, we decided to build the watch with exceptional longevity in mind. Equipped with a Miyota 9039 automatic movement and combined with a double-domed sapphire glass, the watch was built to maximize reliability and durability. The watch also has a screw-down crown and 10 ATM water resistance to give it a true field watch rating. So get your fantastic one-of-a-kind watch today, made from real D-Day history, at the link below. They also wanted the Germans to believe that Norway, Belgium, and other locations were also viable targets. The deception included fake equipment such as inflatable tanks, vehicles, and fake aircraft, in effect, a phantom army. Information was not led out in the open because that would be too conspicuous, but it was channeled through. And as George Patton was based in England, and they were across from Pas de Calais, double agents were fed information and fraudulent radio transmissions were allowed to be intercepted. Eisenhower selected June 5, 1944 as the start date for the invasion, however. Bad weather on the days leading up to the operation caused it to be delayed for 24 hours. On the morning of June 5th, after his meteorologist predicted improved conditions for the following day, Eisenhower gave the go-ahead for Operation Overlord. He told the troops, "You are about to embark upon a great crusade. toward which we have striven these many months. The eyes of the world are upon you." Later that day, more than 5,000 ships and landing craft carrying troops and supplies left England for the trip across the Channel to France, while more than 11,000 aircraft were mobilized to provide air cover and support for the invasion. American heavy bombers pounded the coastal defenses along the Atlantic Wall under the supervision of Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, who was home on leave at the time. The plan was to have the paratroopers dropped in the dark of night on June 5th and 6th to secure key bridges for the ground forces to cross, disrupt German communications and supply lines, as well as tie up German forces until the paratroopers could be relieved. In June 1944, over 1,000 C-47s had been staged on several airfields in preparation for Operation Overlord, the Allied invasion of Normandy. C-47s towing many Waco, Horsa, and Hamilcar gliders carrying 17,262 men of the U.S. 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions and 7,162 men of Major General Richard Windy Gale's British 6th Airborne Division were to embark upon the largest invasion by sea or air in history. On the eve of D-Day, Sergeant Jake McNeese stood on the runway in full combat gear. The part Choctaw Indian from Oklahoma had his face covered with war paint and his hair shaved into a mohawk. 12 more American paratroopers followed suit. Finally, 1,500 C-47s, 822 of them towing gliders, came in flying as low as 500 feet altitude, and more than 1,000 C-47s delivered the paratroops and their equipment to Normandy. The paratroopers were scattered widely by pilots who gave the green light to jump early due to the heavy flak and also high winds. But that tactical error aided the greater strategic plan, as the scattered landings confused the Germans. While tactically not as efficient as planned, the scattered force was a strategic force multiplier, as the defending Germans thought that due to the widely scattered elements, the airborne invasion force was much larger than it actually was, thus diverting German forces from more critical areas. Adolf Hitler slept through the invasion, as no one wanted to wake him with the news. When Hitler finally awoke and was informed, he believed all the deception and not only canceled an order to send the Calais forces to Normandy, he actually rerouted reinforcements coming from other areas away from Normandy and to Calais. This bought the landing force invaluable time. One German armored commander, whom I knew and interviewed, Lieutenant Colonel, later General Hans von Luck, commanding the 125th Panzer Grenadier Regiment and his entire 21st Panzer Division, were hampered by orders to make no moves without Hitler's approval, and when finally released, had to deal with total confusion from the division level on down. Luck requested permission to attack, but General Edgar Feuchtinger, the 21st Panzer Division's commander, refused to allow him to do so, citing strict orders not to engage in major operations unless cleared to do so by the High Command, meaning Hitler. Finally, having one battalion released, his tanks and accompanying infantry were diverted and found themselves coming across the British 6th Parachute and 51st Highland Division supported by the 4th Armored Brigade. As von Luck stated, it was total chaos, a confusion you cannot imagine unless you experienced it. General James Gavin, who commanded the 82nd Airborne Division, stated during his interview, "Yes, we were scattered all over the place. Some men from the 82nd and 101st found themselves isolated and meeting up far from their intended drop zones, but it worked to our advantage." The amphibious invasions began at 6:30 a.m. The British and Canadians overcame light opposition to capture beaches codenamed Gold, Juno, and Sword, as did the Americans at Utah Beach. But U.S. forces faced heavy resistance at Omaha Beach, where there were over 2,000 Americans killed. However, by day's end, approximately 156,000 Allied troops had successfully stormed Normandy's beaches. According to some estimates, more than 4,000 Allied troops lost their lives in the D-Day invasion, with thousands more wounded or missing. Less than a week later, on June 11th, the beaches were fully secured and over 326,000 troops, more than 50,000 vehicles and some 100,000 tons of equipment had landed at Normandy. By the end of June, the Allies had seized the vital port of Cherbourg, landed approximately 850,000 men and 150,000 vehicles in Normandy. The Allies had landed some 156,000 soldiers on the beaches of Normandy by the end of the first day. At that time, the D-Day invasion was the largest naval, air, and land operation in history. General Eisenhower was so concerned over the possible failure of the operation that he wrote 2 letters in advance. One, praising the success of the operation and applauding the bravery and determination of the Allied forces. The second letter, a backup, was an apology to the families of the men who died, where he would take full responsibility for the failure of the invasion should it fail. Nowhere in that letter did he even hint at assigning blame towards anyone but himself. Luckily, that second letter never had to be published. By August 1944, all of northern France had been liberated, and in May of 1945, the Allies had defeated the Germans. Historians often refer to D-Day as the beginning of the end of World War II. It was, in fact, the beginning of the end for Germany. Thank you for watching this episode of Forgotten History. If you liked what you saw, please click like, share, and subscribe. And if you would like to assist with the ever-increasing cost of production, please consider becoming a channel member and joining our Patreon page. Please check out our merchandise store. And thanks for watching.